big goal of our company is we want to be different than a lot of the larger companies out there that sell similar products who really don't connect with their customers. We want to connect with them. We know we can do that through TikTok and Instagram.
Hey guys, this is Nate Slamans, joined by Andy Slamans, as always, on the Amazing Freedom Podcast Show, where we're going to be talking about what we're doing week to week with our brands. If you're not familiar with us, we own a portfolio of brands that does close to 15 million a year. And on this show, we just want to talk about what we've been up to really over the past couple of years, and then recently just the last couple weeks, and specifically today, as we plan for our largest brand, our 8-figure brand, what we're going to be looking at in 2022. And we're just going to be going through a number of recent related news and everything as well. But first, Andy, as we get into that, I just wanted to start with what you've been up to, what I've been up to. And as you go ahead and get this shared around, I'll start. And it's been kind of a crazy year. I think we said this last time. Definitely the last couple of years have been crazy for everyone. But this year, for some reason, for us personally, I feel like was crazier even than last year in a lot of ways. And so just this last week, unfortunately, had a couple of things just going on. And anybody who manages teams, I think, can relate to this. Whenever I found this a lot in the last 2 years. So in our brand, Andy, we hired over 50 people in the last 2 years, right? Over 50 people, many of those being located in the Philippines, being what we typically refer to as virtual employees that work, although most people are virtual employees nowadays, so that title probably doesn't apply as much anymore. But team members that are located, that we've never met in person, that are located overseas. And right now we have about 25 with our brand that works exclusively with the brand. And just last week, they had a super typhoon come through and hit part of the islands, especially like the Cebu area, and really just devastated a couple of our team members, right? Which is always, just the fact that we have people that we know, people on our team that are experiencing this has been a real challenge. And so we had 2 team members, a husband and a wife, and then another team member who basically lost their entire house. The typhoon came through, flooded it bad. The one team member house is completely destroyed. And so they've been looking for a place to work. And I know a lot of people, anybody who has team members in the Philippines that might be watching this would definitely be interested in the comments if you experienced any challenges with your team members lately. But really, so that was specifically this last week, but there seems to be always something going on whenever you have a team, right? When you have team members, because really you're dealing with people's lives, mingling with, the business that you're trying to run. But these aren't just robots that you're working with. These are real people. And so they have real problems and stuff going on as well. So we had that last week, that super typhoon come through and just cause several of our team members have issues. Thankfully, I will say this, Andy, Gay Lisby posted in the Amazon Seller Tribe that some of our team members were experiencing, these heartbreaking conditions, where one of our team members actually sent us a message saying that he was holding the door, trying to prevent the wind from blowing the door open. They had their 2 little boys there. Super scary scenario and traumatizing, obviously, anybody who's gone through a traumatic storm like that experience. But Gay posted this, and she was able to have several Amazon Seller Tribe group members that donated money just super generously without even prompting or asking. Gabe was just asking for prayers and thoughts for these people. We had some team members donate over $1,000 to help these team members of ours. So really touching. I'll just say that definitely is the heart of the Amazon Seller Tribe in general. That's why we love that group so much. The group members in there are the best group members in the world, I would say. So it was really touching to see that happen. And then this last week, one of our managers for another service that we have, not related to the Amazon Seller Tribe, he had a father pass away this last week. Obviously a devastating situation there. And so those types of things, right? They definitely seem to come in pairs all in a row. And whenever you have team members, that kind of stuff's going to happen, right? And it does create challenges as a employer or a boss and an owner. How do you help your team? How do you deal with these situations? What's even simple things like, what are the time off? How much time off are you going to give someone to grieve or to deal with a situation like this, right? There's not always a manual book that says exactly what you're supposed to do. And these are things I feel like we've just had to kind of figure out the past couple of years as we've managed people. By the way, did you realize that right now we are up to 70 team members that we have full-time on staff between US and Philippines? Did you realize that the number was that big?
Yeah, no, I didn't. That's amazing. That's really cool.
So that's across the portfolio. That's not just one brand or anything. That's across our portfolio of services and brands that we own. 70 team members full time. And we have a number of kind of independent contractors in the US as well that don't even fall under that number. So probably closer to 80 if you count that. So that's been my kind of craziness. And then on top of that, not to make this, I know we're starting this off a little bit on a down note. We'll go up from here. But my wife's dad just passed away yesterday morning. So those kind of things, right, just kind of seem to come in pairs, compound. Definitely a stressful situation, hard situation, of course, whenever something like that happens. And just what my wife's been going through, it was a couple weeks coming as far as declining health. But these are the struggles that I think when you're talking about business and selling on Amazon and trying to run a business, that sometimes you obviously don't plan for these kind of things to happen, right? And it does happen, and it kind of just stops everything. So that definitely is a challenge. How do you run your business when, run a big brand, run a bunch of services when you have typhoons coming and, death of loved ones? Those are struggles. So again, not to start this off too depressing, we'll go up from here, but that's just to be real. What's been happening in my life. It's kind of been a whirlwind. Definitely not at the peak of my game this last week, but I'll get there heading into the new year, I think. So that's what's been going on with me. What's up with you, Andy? What's been new with you lately?
Yeah, just to kind of build on what you're saying, it is amazing that now we work with over 70, right? Like you said, it's just so cool. Again, that's the phenomenal thing about the internet, that we can connect and have a community. I mean, you and I talk about this a lot, that, we spend a lot of hours working with these folks that live halfway around the world. And it's just natural when you spend as much time, when you spend hours, right, working on different projects, you really grow close to them. But it's just such a blessing, that we're able to employ and a partner, and, they live in a tough country. Yeah, because of the internet, they're able to make a livable wage. So I think that's really cool. And yeah, I mean, that's just life, right? We all deal with it. You got to, kind of navigate your way through when stuff happens, and you adjust, you pivot, but you got to keep, when it comes to being an entrepreneur, you're really the one that's, pushing, making the ball bounce. So you have to try to balance all those different things. And thankfully, we've been able to do that.
Yeah, I would say growing the business over the past 5 years, or several businesses, there's definitely a lot of life wisdom and lessons that you learn that you just can't get otherwise if you don't own or run a business, right? You might be interacting with other people, but there's a different level of all the decision making that you need to make when it comes into it. So in today's talk, when we get into this, we're going to be looking at just this time of the year, 2022, and what we do to plan for our up and coming year for a brand that now has done over $10 million in sales for the last 2 years. We're going to be talking about what milestones and goals and things do we look at in 2022. Before we get into that, we're going to talk about a couple Amazon news items, things that have been literally in the Amazon news just recently that I think are interesting topics for any Amazon seller. So no matter what type of selling you do on Amazon, these are things to be aware of and that are always impacting us. Before we get to that, I see Alan in the comments want to say, hey, Alan, good morning to you. Hope you're doing well. And Alan Taylor, a great guy. Good to see you. All right. So Andy, the first thing in the news that I saw this week that caught my mind, it was really interesting, was a thing that just came out on December 22nd saying important changes planned for restock limits in the IPI threshold. So do you remember when IPI thresholds came out? It's been a couple years, but I'm trying to remember when IPI score first came out. Do you remember?
Probably about 2 years ago.
That's what I wanted to say, 2, maybe 3 years ago. And this has been, as an Amazon seller for me, a really frustrating experience, I feel like, because Amazon, released it. And they released this at first just because they were having inventory or space issues, right? In your mind, that's why they came out with this whole threshold, right?
Yep. They don't want to be a storage facility.
Right. So, I mean, they were pretty upfront about that. Obviously, like, hey, we basically don't have enough space. We need to do these thresholds for people that aren't managing their inventory well. This was kind of forced inventory management from Amazon. And so they came out with this a couple of years ago. I can't remember when. And they just said this, effective January 1st, 2022, will reduce the inventory performance index IPI threshold for FBA storage limits to 400. And then they said this, which I thought was interesting, and I'm really interested to hear your take on it, Andy, is that with this IPI change, less than 10% of sellers will have storage volume limits. So they're saying now they're reducing this. Previously, everybody was always scrambling because it was like, how do you reduce or how do you increase your IPI score? It seems like sometimes we would do stuff that they would tell you to do and it wouldn't make any change. And then you would you would do something silly like that doesn't seem like it should impact it and would lower your score. And everybody's always freaking out, getting close to that cutoff line. But now they're saying this new threshold that they're making of 400, it should only impact 10% of sellers. So I thought this was interesting because they're basically making it less restrictive, which, must mean that they're either figuring out their space issue a little bit, or they just know that every seller's kind of worried about this and are trying to be more clear. What's your thoughts about them basically making this a little bit less restrictive when it comes to the IPI score?
I think maybe they're catching up. So 2020, right? They were slammed. They didn't have enough space. They didn't have enough workers. And now I think they probably are trying to, they've got that infrastructure built up and they're, opening up multiple warehouses all the time. It's funny that Alan is watching this because Alan's an Amazon seller. He also runs an awesome ungating business, but he also does construction at Amazon warehouses. And so he has a construction company that builds them. And, he shares they're always building. And so, hopefully, fingers crossed that maybe they are catching up. And so they can lower those scores and not be as tight as they needed to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thankfully, we've never run into the IPI score being an issue ourselves, but I know, especially in the Amazon Seller Tribe group that we help run with Gay and Gary, that several of our group members have come dangerously close to the score where they were definitely sweating out, or some members, I do believe, have fallen under it. If you just acquire too much inventory, you're not moving in enough, whatever the scenario is. I would be interested if anybody watching this has ever run into the score limit or is currently under some kind of restriction due to it. And we'll see going forward if it truly does feel like it's that 10% or less number of people that really do have an issue with it. So I think good news for all sellers to have this, because this was definitely a stressor on most sellers, just monitoring their score and seeing if it was going to be an issue. So the fact that they're making it a lower score, I think is going to be good news. And, when it comes to managing inventory, I will say, I guess in that way, it was a little bit helpful. Some of these data predictors that Amazon's been putting in, like the number of days of stock that you have in your inventory, I will say has been helpful. It's still not perfect, obviously, in some scenarios where there are how many days of stock that you have. However, I will say over the past year, I feel like it's gotten a lot better, and I've seen it trail pretty close now, even compared to some of the other softwares that are out there that we've used and looked at, that Amazon's getting pretty good at predicting how much stock you have. And I mean, it makes sense, right? Amazon's basically a giant data machine business company, and that's what they run on. And their predictability is typically probably going to end up being better than third-party softwares or even ours on our own. However, they still don't know some of the nuances that occur with your business and your branding and seasonality like we do. So that's probably always going to be the difference. All right, that makes sense. Anything else on IPI, Andy?
No, yeah. So hopefully, that's a good thing. And like you said, their software is getting better, every day. The challenge that a lot of Amazon sellers face, right, is not necessarily even the IP score. It's, the limits that they put on you sometimes. And a lot of times they don't necessarily account for seasonality. So, that's the talk, when I talk to sellers a lot of times, especially coming into Christmas, they limit the amount you can send in. As a seller, how many you're going to sell. So hopefully that'll continue to get better.
And I will say one tip that hopefully will help even just one person here. We ran into some of those issues, I want to say back in like August, September, with some of our oversized units being not having enough storage. And we opened some cases just right through the normal case log, asking Amazon to increase our oversized storage limit. And they approved it. In the past, we actually had a personal rep that had reached out to us at one point and told us that she could help get our oversized storage limit increased if we put in a request every week. We would have to do it every week, and she would pass that along. And basically, Amazon only has so much storage that they can allocate to all sellers, which I found that very interesting, that they basically have this like one big number, like 1 million units or whatever it is, that they then allocate out to all these different sellers. And you have to basically ask before everybody else does. Unfortunately, about a couple months after we first connected with her, she retired just left Amazon after being there for a bunch of years. And so we lost our contact. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten a new one. But just by opening up some new cases, we were able to get our oversize limit increased. So if you're watching this, you haven't tried that yet, I would encourage you, if you're running into inventory restrictions, just open up a case, say, hey, we need this, give a reason why, like we need to send them more units. We think they're going to sell. We see this being a good reason why it's going to sell, and, give us some more storage. And that worked for us. So I would recommend doing that if you haven't yet. All right. Next topic I wanted to cover as part of just this little mini news segment was Amazon coming out and saying that, this is the title of their post, how our counterfeit crimes unit is holding counterfeiters accountable. So this is kind of interesting because we always see this happen with Amazon, right? Over the past year, we saw a bunch of news outlets come out and talk about how bad the counterfeit problem is in retail in general, but that Amazon is basically the main driver of it. What was your initial thoughts when that came out, Andy, those news articles? I mean, there's been several through the years, but I felt like more came up this year. Maybe it was pandemic related. But they came out. What was your initial thoughts when you saw that Amazon's like the chief driver of counterfeits?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a whack-a-mole. The platform is so massive. The company is so huge. I mean, they almost have 1 million, full-time employees, right? And so
I think more than 1 million now.
Yeah. And so it's going to always be a problem. And, hopefully they continue to get better, right, at catching them. For us as private label sellers, it's not so much of an issue because we have our own brand. It would be as we continue to grow if someone, right, tries to counterfeit us and list on our listings. But I mean, it's a good sign because you have to have a trusted platform, and Amazon has done a good job with that, right? Although as they've grown, I do think they have to get back to that, where the customer just trusts Amazon. We don't want Amazon, right, to become a lesser trusted platform, like kind of happened with eBay. eBay was trusted, it grew. A lot of Chinese sellers came on there, and unfortunately, some shady stuff started to happen. So we want Amazon to invest, right, in this to prevent those counterfeiters, to always keep a premium customer and make it a trusted platform.
So this was an article from Fast Company back in May. It said the volume of the problem is astonishing. Amazon's battle against fakes may be too little, too late. And they gave some numbers like Amazon says it blocked 10 billion attempted counterfeit listings in 2020. They said that up from 6 billion from the year before, and destroyed 2 million fake goods in its warehouses. Researchers who study counterfeiting estimated that nearly $1 trillion worth of fake goods flood the global economy. Now, that's not all on Amazon, but these experts say that most of the fake goods on Amazon are not knockoff designer handbags, but counterfeits of everyday staples like Dove soap, Similac formula, Hydro Flask bottles, right? So it's stuff that you wouldn't think of. It's just generic, they're not generic, but branded goods that are everyday staples. And you know what's interesting? We actually had talked to sellers. I don't know if we're allowed to say this or not, but we talked to sellers. This was years ago. I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. We talked to some sellers who knew a guy who would actually deal with counterfeit goods, and he would basically mix counterfeit goods with real goods. So he would take legitimate invoices that he had for some popular brands, and then he would, I don't know how, we didn't know all the details, get counterfeit goods of the same product, so that if he did ever get caught, he would say, no, look, I have the invoice to back it up. So I think that's, I'm sure, like a classic counterfeiter move, that they basically come up with these contingencies if they get caught. So scary, right? The first thing that comes to my mind is, wait a second, I buy a lot of stuff on Amazon. How much of the stuff have I bought that was straight up just counterfeit and you don't know, right? We actually know a couple of stories about people who would either take like refurbished items and clean them up and sell them as new, even though they were technically used before. That's another scenario that happens, right? So kind of scary to hear. Amazon says in this article, this news thing, Amazon now, back to them, saying they've launched their counterfeit crimes unit. So now they're getting pretty serious. They have like an official crimes unit. And they say a global team of former prosecutors, former FBI agents, experienced investigators, and data analysts who are going to pursue targets. So based on this, it sounds like, again, Amazon basically got some bad press, and now they're going to really bring down the hammer, and they have some legitimate means to catch these people. So what's your thoughts? Are we going to see kind of these waves of bannings going on again? And is this going to get better, or is this just Amazon coming out?
Hopefully, again, there's, always in any type of business, you're going to have bad actors, right? That are always trying to make a quick buck. And, there's a criminal element. And we want Amazon to throw, as much money as possible, again, to make sure that it is a trusted platform.
Well, I think I saw somewhere they said they poured like 700 million into this counterclaims unit. So hopefully that's enough. And yeah, definitely we want this gone, because just like retail theft in stores, all it basically does is it's like a tax on every legitimate, honest player, right? That has to pay. Same thing with the consumer end, right? Where now that's one thing as a seller. I think most sellers would like Amazon to put similar efforts into the consumer fraud that happens where people buy goods and then they maybe return it to Amazon and they return something completely different. How many of our Amazon Seller Tribe members have received a pair of dirty sneakers that were not even what they sold to a customer, that were clearly used for a year before getting sent back? And it seems like Amazon's more hesitant to address that. And how much of that is because of Amazon's just constant wanting to put the customer first? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it happens. Thankfully, though, for the majority, I think 99% of customers aren't going to go through that kind of effort or work. But again, you are going to always have kind of the bottom element that might do something like that. But overall, the percent, I think, is very low.
Honestly, we feel like in our brand, selling 10 million this past year happens very little. And we actually just recently ran a replacement report where we're showing how many units basically were defective in replacement. And again, our overall percentage is under 5% on average, which honestly is pretty low compared again to general retail and our specific products. And I know every product category is different. Some products basically have a higher return rate than others. Clothes, shoes are always going to have higher returns. For our products, we felt like that defect return percentage is pretty good overall. All right. So I think that covers some of the recent news that I saw that I thought was interesting. Now I want to talk about, what we're doing in our own brand as we head into 2022 now. We own several different brands and services, and we're always trying to basically plan ahead, which is very difficult. But this time of year is obviously a good time to reflect on what happened in 2021 and what we're going to do for 2022. So basically, the way we like to do it is we like to establish some of these key milestones that we're looking to hit for the next year. And hopefully, no matter, again, where you're at in your business, no matter if you're an arbitrage seller or a brand seller, whether you're just starting on Amazon or you've been selling for years and years, I think this is something that is a valuable exercise to do. And I think most people do some form of goal planning a little bit, saying like, hey, I want to hit this number of sales for the next year. But we try to take that a little bit further and set specific milestones that we want to hit and look at some quarterly objectives for the year. And we would do that. We did that more aggressively this last 2 years since our brand took off. Just want to get your thoughts as we talk about those milestones, like what you felt like that did for our brand, Andy, just, and any thoughts about what that did for especially the team the last 2 years.
Yeah, no, for sure. Every company, if you want to scale, if you want to grow, you have to have those goals. And what's really been helpful for us is being able to break those down into smaller quarterly goals. So we have a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 1-year plan, and then we break that down by quarter. And it just allows us, right, to be able to kind of recognize and, like Dan Wentworth always says, the leaders of the organization, they have the flashlight and they're just shining it. And then hopefully everyone else follows, right, where we're shining it, and being able to do that every quarter and then being able to measure it. It just gives a lot more, I think, satisfaction to the folks on our team, right, that are kind of moving toward that goal, because they can see how much effort and very specific ways, how much they've been able to push each quarter.
Yeah. So my recommendation, this comes from several popular frameworks and books and systems out there, is to, like Andy said, set that long-term goal and then set a 1-year target and then try to figure out how you're going to get to that 1-year target based on these 90-day quarterly themes and goals. The reason being that it's very difficult for us and even more difficult for your team, as they don't care usually as much about the ultimate goals as you do, to set these 90-day mini goals, because that's about as much time as we can focus on. So we did that again this last couple of years. We felt like it worked really well, keeping the team focused and then kind of resetting every 90 days. And so I just want to go over some of the major milestones that we're looking at this next year, Andy. So the first one that these aren't actually in any particular order as far as when we're looking to accomplish them, but I just want to hit these in this way. So number one is going to be our expansion to Europe. So want to get your thoughts on that. Expanding to Europe, that's going to be something that we're going to likely set an entire quarter theme around. And obviously that doesn't mean that's all we'll focus on for that quarter, but we're going to try to make it so all we accomplish that quarter is getting to this major milestone. That quarter will be a success getting us closer to our year goal. So your thoughts on expanding into Europe and making that a quarterly goal for this upcoming year?
Yeah, we really should have done it 2 years ago. It's kind of a no-brainer. It does take a lot of effort and energy, which is probably why we continue to put it off. But I'm excited because, we can just bring all of our listings over. They have the reviews that are very solid. And I think it's going to be a big win for us. So, if you have a brand and you're just selling in the US, you need to, move over to Europe as soon as possible. And I think that's going to dramatically increase our revenue and our net profit.
To our defense, I'd be interested, anybody watching or listening, that their experience on this, if they did expand to Europe recently, one of the reasons we hesitated this past year was just the whole shipping supply chain crisis, right? Like, we were looking at it, and it's one thing paying $20,000 for containers to come here to our warehouse where we can house the inventory, where we already have these proven data track of sales, where we're confident that it's going to keep selling. Whereas expanding to Europe, there's always that period of unknown where we're pretty confident it will sell, but we don't know how quickly and we don't know to what degrees. So to pay that much in shipping to get it there has been a little bit of a struggle. I think for me, that was the main reason why we hesitated. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, for sure. And, it doesn't, in talking to the sources that we work with, it looks like, higher shipping prices, not that high, at least right now, but they're going to continue for the next 2 to 3 years. Apparently, USA and Europe are hogging all the containers. So we got all these empty containers, in the ports in Europe and the USA. We need to get them to China so that those shipping rates can go down.
That's what they say. It's hard to know what's going on in some ways, but that's what they say. So yeah, so we're probably just going to bite the bullet and do it this year, just because we know, based on talking to other sellers and what we're seeing, that if we expand to Europe correctly, it should be able to add over time anywhere from 20 to 30% plus of our current revenue over in Europe. And for some sellers, we know, I actually saw an inside look at one brand. I don't think I was supposed to, but I was looking at someone. I saw something that, so some brands are selling more over in Europe, right? Just depends on the competition, what's going on. And obviously, I think their marketplace in the global Europe marketplace over there, regional, is over 100 million members, they say, that are shoppers. So could be, for some people, just as good, if not better, than the US marketplace. So that's one that we're looking to do. A second major milestone that we're looking to do is to get our Instagram account for our brand to 50,000 followers, which sounds like a lot to me. However, just this past year, we were able to basically go from 0 to 10,000 relatively quickly with our social team doing some good work. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that, trying to set that target of 50,000. First of all, do you think we can do it? And why is that important to try to get to a social goal like that with Instagram for our brand?
Yeah, no, I mean, being able to connect with our customers and follow them along their journey, right? From purchase to using the product, and then demonstrating, right, how the product's used, being able to connect with other influencers. It's huge, right? To be able to build a real brand. And so, that goal of being able to hit 50,000, I mean, when we hit 10,000 followers, we had an awesome celebration. Again, a lot of our followers are customers who use our products. A lot of them will actually generate videos of our products in use, which is terrific. But that's when you really start to have a real brand, right? When you have folks that are talking about it and not just searching for it on Amazon. And so, that's a huge goal of ours. Thankfully, we have some amazing team members who are creating phenomenal content, right? Not only on Instagram, but on TikTok. So TikTok's a big one, right, too, that we're really pushing to be able to connect, right, with those customers and help them along their journey. So that's a big goal of our company, is we want to be different than a lot of the larger companies out there that sell similar products who really don't connect with their customers. We want to connect with them. We know we can do that through TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah, and building that community it just takes a lot of work, right? A lot of content work, a lot of stuff that you're not doing on Amazon, but we've found it to be worth it for those reasons you gave. And I just want to highlight that point of the user generated content, we call it, that comes out of that is really valuable to use in different places where our customers are actually using the product and then posting it in these social platforms, trying to encourage them to do that and build relationships really with these customers that have somewhat of a following of their own has been really helpful. So I think, I would encourage anybody who isn't currently doing that with their brand. If you haven't yet, 2022, which by the way, everybody's probably seen that meme by now, right? That says, just realize that 2022 is pronounced 2022. So hopefully it's not V2 of 2020, but that's going to be important this next year more than ever, just building that off Amazon community. Okay, so that's another milestone. A third one that we're really excited about is one of our goals is to launch a brand new $1 million product line. So this would be a product line that complements our existing products, but that is basically a whole new product line, like a vertical integration of our existing products that we're looking to launch in the beginning of January timeframe, that we're confident can get to the $1 million mark as far as this new product line, which probably will expand to about 3 to 5 products overall, that we'll be able to sell $1 million worth of this product line in 2022. Really excited about this. So just give me your thoughts, like launching a new product line, all that goes into it, and really spending a lot of effort and time with this new product line.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal, is you want to be able to find products where there's obvious demand and, where you can see the upside. I think that's something we've learned along our journey, right? Selling on Amazon and e-commerce. We don't want to pick products that are going to have a very low ceiling. So we want to look at niches, and we want to look at products where you can, right, expand to $1 million and beyond. In order to do that, you have to be able to identify that there is a market and there's a demand for those products. Super excited about the line that we are looking at, or we're in the process of building, because we see the potential there. So we just have to execute it. And like you said, I mean, it'll just add a great vertical to what we already are selling. And as a small business, again, whether you're doing private label like we do, or whether you're doing arbitrage, whether that's online or retail arbitrage, you can never be static, right? You always have to be pushing and expanding, because if you're not, then you're dying. You cannot just be lukewarm and think that, hey, look, I'm just going to have the same year this year that I did last year, doing the same things that I did. One of the things that I love about Dan Wentworth that he always shares with us is every year, it's like he has a new product that he's chasing, or that he's discovered, or that his team has found. He's never thinking, and he says it like with hopeful expectation. Whereas a lot of time business folks, they may begin to contract or pull back, or think, what, I can just continue to do what I'm doing. But as we have seen, if you do that, that's when you're really going to start to lose, and you're going to lose traction, where you always have to be pushing.
How wild is Dan's story, just to stay on him for a moment, where he was like the arbitrage king in selling a bunch of, I'm trying to remember his sales amount, but he was like consistently around $5 million mark for a couple of years, selling mostly shoes and arbitrage products that he would get from outlets. And now Dan, like you said, pivoting new products last couple of years, and now his brand that he's been building really the last 2 years, and this year especially, just really taking off. I mean, how wild is that he was able to make that transition? And I just felt like he did it in a unique way, where most sellers either like they do arbitrage and then they start something completely new. I feel like he just took his same team, the same people he was working with for the most part, the same business in a way and brand. I mean, obviously they started a new brand, but the transition just seemed so crazy. I think that's just what you were saying, that Dan is always has his mind looking for that next product opportunity and not staying stale, even though he's been in, how long has he been in the e-commerce game, eBay, since what's
in 20 years?
20, I think it's over 20 years, because I think he was in the 90s. So it's over 20 years. So really, really cool to see someone like Dan be able to go from one model for so long and transition into building a brand and still doing arbitrage stuff, but just the flexibility that he's had with himself and his team, right?
Yeah, phenomenal. And again, it gives hope and encouragement, because look, you and I both know it's not all unicorns and rainbows, for any seller journey. And that goes for any business. But when you have a veteran like that, who's kind of weathered the storm over 20 years, who is also saying like, look, you got to stay agile and just be hopeful, and just know that, reselling and retail has been around since the beginning of time. The cavemen, they probably traded, and sold things, and it's just going to continue.
Last thing on Dan, I think it was a post he just recently made in the Amazon Seller Tribe. He said that I think it was 2015 he started on Amazon, and at the time he thought, "Oh man, I'm too late." Right? It's very interesting to think that in 2015 Dan was doing like over $1 million on eBay and, doing successful, but he got into Amazon. He saw the potential of FBA, but his first thought was, "Oh no, I'm too late. This isn't going to work. I'm late to the show." So just to think what his business has done over the past 6 years, if he would have stayed with that mentality of it's too late, like I shouldn't even try, his brand would have basically, or his business would have just stayed near that 1 million mark instead of being at an 8-figure brand like it is now. So just crazy to see that, right?
Yeah. And the encouragement, now you're starting to get me fired up. The encouragement of our partners like Gary Ray and Gay Lisby, the encouragement is you have to be patient. Nothing's going to happen overnight, right? But in this business, if you are patient, if you have grit, then you are going to continue to build. Even when you take those hits, to me, it's just amazing. Gary just put a post recently in the tribe, and Gary's our partner, a phenomenal coach in the Amazon Seller Tribe, about how he's going to do $2.5 million this year in mainly online arbitrage. He does do a little bit of retail arbitrage. And he's just built this phenomenal system that is really a cash flow machine, great net profit. But look, he's on year probably 5 or 6, right, of selling. And so the key is, if you're just watching this, you're interested in Amazon, or if you're already selling, you cannot quit. You have to be patient. You got to continue to work the system. It won't be overnight success, but if you do that, just like we talked about with Dan Wentworth, it is absolutely a business model, right, that you can grow.
What I love about Gary's story is that not only is he running an insurance business that's very successful, that's where he was at for, I think it's like 40 years, something very long that he did insurance. He's still running that and part of that pretty passively, but he has that. His growth on Amazon has been very consistent, right? And so if you read, I think it's Great by Choice by Jim Collins, I think that's the one. He talks about how the best businesses in the world, the Amazons, the Microsofts, they weren't wild in their growth up and down. Typically, they were very steady, marching along with like an average 20% growth rate year over year. Now, obviously, every business has years where you're just going to spike and have insane growth. We had that recently where it's like 100% growth and you just grow dramatically, which is great. With Amazon, you can do that and you can scale up quickly because of the infrastructure of FBA. But on average, most businesses are steady. They're not doing wild swings. And Gary really has been able to do that, like you said, over the past 5 or 6 years. And I think his numbers this last year was like a 25 to 30% growth rate year over year, which just shows how steady he's been. And it's not just doing something for one time, burning bright for a couple months. Gary, he sets these fundamentals and these business principles that he's learned through his career. And then he's able to apply those just very methodically, and he builds up team members. I'm talking about this because he does it so masterfully that, I'm jealous of it and envious in some ways, because I've seen how he's really just built up his team in a slow, steady way so that they're running most of the business. And when it comes to online arbitrage, he really doesn't need to do much heavy work very often, right? So that's just been really encouraging to see him do that. And I'm still taking lessons as far as how to better build the team and better approach some of these areas.
And it's like you just said, they're timeless principles. So he just made a post. He's getting a huge, Amazon payout. Now, a person that's not good in business, they may take that payout and they may go buy a new car, or they may go, on a vacation. But that's not the way. If you want to continue to grow your business, you got to take care of your business. You got to nurture your business. So, you made the post. Look, he's paying off whatever capital you use on different credit cards, right, to purchase inventory. He gets that payout. He pays it out. You never take that money from your business, because that's how you become poor. That's how you run your business in the ground. That's how you get bankrupt, right? You take that money, just like he made in that post. You take care of what you have to take care of if you have debts, right? And then you build and buy more inventory. Timeless business principle.
And I hope this is not seen as a negative, but just transparency to everybody listening. In our brand that we've been building to the 10 million mark, it's been since 2018 that we started this. We actually have never taken a salary from that business still. Thankfully, we have other businesses that we own that we're able to do that. Not everybody I know can just not take a salary, but with this particular brand, one of the reasons we've been able to grow it to the 8-figure mark as fast as we have is because we've left all the capital in the business. And because this is an inventory-based, cash-intensive business, that's allowed us to scale and grow and get to 8 figures without taking an Amazon loan. But that's because we also haven't taken any money out of the business. We've rolled it all over. So again, hopefully that's seen as an encouraging. And I think, Andy, you've always said this, your recommendation to sellers is if you're working a job, try to stay in that job so that you can use those business principles you're talking about as much as possible. You don't have to take money out of the business. You can do your job and then also build this business on the side. If you're doing arbitrage and you want to build another business off Amazon or build a brand on Amazon, wherever it is, don't stop what you're currently doing, right? That cash flow is important and you're building on it, right? This is something you've been saying from the beginning. And I mean, you practiced that in your own life, in your career before jumping to Amazon as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, now we're probably getting a little into like Dave Ramsey type talk, which is awesome because that's really the way you want to live. I had a real close friend who was from Morocco. He actually, in the early 1990s, he was in the bows of a shipping boat for 15 days. So he came to the country illegally from Morocco and, it landed in New York, escaped from the ship, was in Newark, learned the language. So he went to a mosque. That's the first place. They took him in. He learned how to speak English. He married somebody and I actually worked with him. But he had, an immigrant mindset. And when it comes right to building a business, if you want to scale and you want to build it the right way, and as Americans, we need to have more of that mindset. He just lived super frugally and he was able to build. Now he's extremely wealthy. So think about that. Came to America in the bows of the ship. And now he is wealthier than the majority of friends I know. And he worked just blue collar jobs. But you know what? He had a very good mindset about money coming in, and he used that continue to build as well. And that's how you do it the right way.
You got me interested. Do you know any of the jobs or like businesses he was able to start when he got here?
Yeah. So that's the thing. He worked for other people. So he was a truck driver, right? And then he did deliveries. But it wasn't about so much about what he brought in. It's what he did with it. So, they didn't go out to eat every night, right? They would cook their own food. And so he was actually a relief house parent. So on the weekends, his wife had a full-time job and then he would just do odds and end jobs. And then they would work on the weekend as relief house parents. But it was all about the way that they invested their money that they've been able to build their wealth.
Yeah. So just going back to that work ethic and being willing to work and to save. And yeah, we don't see that as much nowadays. It's a struggle, but I mean, those are the people who are still seeing success. And it's interesting, there's so much complaints that we hear about, just opportunities now these days. But it's interesting when I talk to one of our head team members who lives in the Philippines, but he's actually from Nigeria. All the time, he's telling me his goal, he lives in the Philippines. He still wants to come to either the US or to Canada. He just talks about all the time, like, there's a lot of things bad in America you hear on the news, but it's still the lane of opportunity. There's still a reason that most of the world wants to get to the US. There's still a reason why most immigrants, like you said, that come here are able to be successful if they're willing to work hard. And that's still his goal, right? So I think first of all, I'm thankful, but then also just to look at it, hey, there's still so much opportunity in what we can do if we're able to use these principles that you're talking about to live by, to still be successful in what we're doing. And obviously we've seen that with Amazon and what we've been able to build the last few years. So very exciting. All right. Well, I don't think we got to we got sidetracked. We didn't get to our fourth goal. So we'll talk about that and then we'll finish up. So we talked about expanding to Europe. We talked about getting to 50,000 Instagram followers. We talked about launching a new $1 million product line. And then our fourth milestone goal is to really establish a good acquisition flow of customers from Amazon to Shopify. So, I mean, we've seen this, we've talked about it, but we're really going to try to make a bigger effort. And that's just getting Amazon customers to then become our customers through ways to try to get them to our website, get their information. So, I mean, you've seen this, Andy. I mean, what would you say the aggressiveness of the brands, of the products that you buy? I have one story I want to talk about, but how aggressive are some of these brands at acquiring you as a customer trying to get your information when they send you a product?
Yeah, I mean, that's the ultimate goal. So again, you're trying to make your product sticky with the customer, whether that's an insert, that you put in your product packaging, whether that's a warranty, extended warranty that the customer has to fill out. So far, Amazon has really kept a tight grip on that customer information. Maybe one day they'll open it up and be sharing that, because ultimately I do think, especially for private label brands, that can provide the best customer experience is when we are communicating with those customers. Obviously, Amazon doesn't want to lose that customer, but yeah, that's the goal, and we'll continue to work on that.
So I actually just bought a scale this last week, just like a normal bathroom scale, a cheap one, only $19.99, I think it was. And I was like, this is for like a secondary bathroom. It's gonna see if it even works well. But I got it delivered to my house this last week. And then they had an insert card in it, and it said, hey, scratch this off to win a prize, right? So I scratched it off, and more so just out of curiosity as an Amazon seller, like, all right, what's the strategy? I'm always trying to look like, what's the strategy these other private label brand owners are doing on Amazon? Scratch it off, and it says, hey, congrats, you won a new scale, no catch, like just email us at this email and get another scale. So the same exact product, right? So I was like, okay, this is interesting. They're definitely, if I'm going to email them, they're definitely going to ask me for a review right away, right? And that's what they're going to do. So I email them and I say, hey, here's, I won that, or I just gave my claim or whatever they said to do. They email back. They said, okay, give us your order number so we can verify that you got this at full price and hadn't gotten the free product already, probably. So I gave them my order number. They came back and they're like, okay, give us your address. We'll send it out. And I did. And I kept waiting for the review request, and it didn't happen. They sent the scale, and I was like, okay, is it going to be in the second product? I got it. They sent me an email actually saying they were going to expedite the shipping, which on Amazon, if you do multi-channel fulfillment, it's only like $1 extra usually to expedite it. So they probably just choose that. And then I got it. And so far, there hasn't been the request for the review. Now I'm expecting, this is just like 2 days ago. So I'm expecting I'm going to get another email soon with some kind of follow-up. But pretty interesting that they could sell this product for $19.99 and give me not one, but two of them in separately. So they weren't even like saving on shipping. Like they definitely had to have lost money or broke even at the very most on this transaction so far, but they got my email. So the only thing I can think of is they got my email. That's that acquisition flow. And I'm guessing, again, they're going to at some point ask for some kind of feedback, or they're just hoping that my experience has been so good that I'm going to leave it on my own. But really interesting. And some of the competitiveness that we'll see in that regard going to the future, some of these strategies people are using. And I know you've seen similar stuff, especially with asking for reviews, but I think people are trying to be more careful knowing that Amazon is clamping down on the review request.
Oh, I love the one you showed me the other day, the lottery one.
That was this one.
They had to like scratch off.
That was this one. So they made it like a lottery ticket. And so you had to, it said like, congrats.
Everybody likes to win.
Yeah. Yeah. So everyone's a winner, and you had to actually scratch it off. I will say the lottery approach, like with the scratch off, did make it feel more exciting. I was like, okay, this is cooler than just seeing it on the insert card. It had that secrecy reveal part to it. So if you're looking for a good insert card idea, consider the scratch off lottery style insert card. It got me to do it again as an Amazon seller, but I thought that was interesting. Well, hey guys, I think that wraps it up for this part of the show. If you're listening to the podcast, post podcast, we're actually now going to go into a live part of the session where inside of our Facebook community, we're going to do a deep dive in a couple of product niches that Andy and I were looking at. We're going to give our analysis of just the competition, the demand, what we're seeing with this product. So we're going to do it live with the screen share, looking at what we look for when we're bringing a new product to the marketplace. So if you're watching with us live, stick around. We're going to look at that. If you're watching this afterwards, make sure you go to amazingfreedom.com and sign up to be an Amazing Freedom Insider, where you can go then and access our newsletter we have, where we give more details than we're able to on the podcast, and our Facebook community, where we're going to be going through these live each week, where we deep dive into a niche and just give our thoughts on what we feel like sellers are doing, where trends are heading, and what we look for when it comes to bringing a new product to Amazon.